The end of Leo's old life was announced not with a scream, but with the soft th whump of a mail slot. It was a Tuesday. Leo was in the kitchen of their modest, sunlit apartment, methodically grinding beans for his afternoon coffee. The ritual was a sacred one, the weight of the beans in his palm, the coarse grind, the blooming aroma. It was a small pocket of control in the pleasant, predictable chaos of his life. He was a man who found profound satisfaction in process, in the quiet space between action and result. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and bore the logo of a prestigious law firm he didn't recognize. His name, Mr. Leo Evandale, was typed with an impersonal precision. Frowning, he slit it open with his thumb, a faint dusting of coffee grounds smudging the expensive paper. The first page was a letter. It began, "Dear Leo, by the time you read this, I'll be gone." It was from Sarah. His Sarah. The woman who had laughed with him over burnt toast on Sunday morning, whose cold feet he had warmed against his legs in bed last night, who had kissed him goodbye just 8 hours ago, with a murmured, "See you tonight, love." The words on the page did not compute. They were alien glyphs describing a life he didn't live. She wrote of feeling stifled, of their life together being a comfortable but ultimately stagnant pond. She wrote of a profound connection she had found with someone else, a man named Julian Croft, who saw her potential and offered a world of vibrancy and ambition. She said she was sorry, but not for leaving. She was sorry that Leo wouldn't understand. She was sorry for the inconvenience. The second document was the real masterpiece. It was a petition for divorce. The grounds were irreconcilable differences, a bland legal phrase that masked the nuclear devastation it represented. But it was the attached financial affidavit that made his knees go weak. He had to lean against the granite countertop, the cool surface a stark contrast to the sudden fire in his veins. Sarah, with Julian Croft's no doubt expensive legal counsel, had laid claim to everything. Not just half of their joint savings, which was fair, if brutal, but she was claiming half the future value of Evandale and Croft, the bespoke furniture business he had started from a dusty garage 7 years ago. The business he had nurtured, bled for, and built into a respected local brand. The business that was, until this moment, the proudest achievement of his life. Julian Croft. The name was a punch to the gut. He was Leo's most charismatic client, a high-end property developer with a smile that could charm birds from trees. He'd commissioned several pieces for his luxury show flats, praising Leo's artisanal soul. Leo had introduced him to Sarah at a gallery opening 6 months ago. He remembered feeling a flicker of pride, seeing his beautiful, intelligent wife talking so animatedly with his most successful client. He'd been a fool. The anger came then, a hot, sharp wave that made his hands tremble. He wanted to smash something. He wanted to drive to Julian's glass and steel office tower and throw the letter in his smug, handsome face. He wanted to find Sarah and scream until his voice was raw, until she understood the depth of her betrayal. He picked up his favorite mug, a heavy hand-thrown piece of pottery Sarah had bought him on a trip to Maine. His knuckles were white. He could feel the impulse, a live wire in his muscles, to hurl it against the wall and watch it shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. But he didn't. He took a deep, shuddering breath, then another. He looked at the mug. He thought of the clay, spun and shaped by patient hands, fired in a kiln, transformed from mud into something beautiful and solid. Destruction was so final. It was a quick, violent end. It was messy. Leo was not a messy man. He set the mug down, carefully, on the counter. He folded the letter and the legal documents, sliding them back into the envelope. He finished making his coffee. The routine was an anchor. As the rich, dark liquid dripped into the pot, a strange calm began to settle over him, cold and clear. Revenge, he thought, was like building a piece of fine furniture. You didn't grab the nearest plank of wood and start swinging. You started with the design. You selected your materials with care. You measured twice, cut once. You worked with patience, with precision. The joinery had to be perfect, the finish flawless. A thing rushed was a thing ruined. A thing built with patience that could last a lifetime. He took his coffee to the living room and sat in his favorite armchair, the one he'd reupholstered himself. He looked out the window at the city, at the people scurrying about their lives, oblivious to the quiet cataclysm in apartment 4B. Sarah and Julian thought they had won. They had the momentum, the surprise, the legal upper hand. They had taken his wife and were trying to take his business. They expected him to react, to fight back in a messy, public, and ultimately futile legal battle that would drain his finances and his spirit, leaving him a broken man while they sailed off into their golden sunset. Leo took a slow sip of his coffee. It was perfect. He would not give them the fight they expected. He would not be loud. He would not be messy. He would be a gardener, patiently tending a very special kind of garden. He would plant the seeds of their destruction one by one, water them with their own arrogance, and wait for them to grow into the weeds that would choke the life out of their perfect new world. He smiled, a small, quiet thing that didn't reach his eyes. It was going to be a very relaxed project. Leo's first act was to hire a lawyer, but not a barracuda. Sarah's legal team, no doubt funded by Julian's deep pockets, would be expecting a shark. They were prepared for a frenzy, for teeth and thrashing water. Instead, Leo went to see Arthur Pembleton. Arthur's office was above a bakery, and the air was perpetually infused with the scent of yeast and sugar. The room was a comfortable chaos of stacked legal journals, dusty potted plants, and a tortoiseshell cat named Torts, who slept on a radiator. Arthur himself was a man in his late 60s, with a magnificent white beard and the calm, unhurried demeanor of a man who had seen every legal trick in the book and found most of them unnecessarily dramatic. "So," Arthur said, steepling his fingers after reading Sarah's documents. He took a slow sip of the tea Leo had brought him. "They've gone for the jugular, and the wallet, and the business. Nasty bit of work, this." "They were thorough," Leo agreed, his voice even. "This claim on the future value of Evandale and Company is particularly aggressive and legally inventive. They're trying to argue that your wife's emotional support and domestic management during the early years constitute a direct investment entitling her to a share of future profits." Arthur's tone was dry. "It's the kind of argument a lawyer makes when his client has more money than sense and wants to be punitive." "Can they win?" Leo asked. "In a long, drawn-out, expensive court battle? Possibly. A judge might award her something, if only to avoid the spectacle. But that's what they're counting on. They want to bleed you dry until you settle for whatever they want." Leo nodded. "I don't want a long, drawn-out battle." Arthur raised a bushy white eyebrow. "No? No. I want to play a different game." Leo leaned forward. "I want you to be relentlessly reasonable. Agree to the straightforward stuff. The joint savings account, the division of the physical assets in the apartment. Don't fight them on anything that's a clear-cut 50-50 split." "And the business?" Arthur asked, a glint of interest in his eyes. "The business is the line in the sand. But we don't defend it by building a wall. We defend it by questioning the very ground they're standing on. We respond to their aggressive 20-page motions with calm 3-paragraph letters. We request clarification. We ask for detailed documentation to support their claims. We slow-walk everything. We are the legal equivalent of cooling treacle." A slow smile spread across Arthur's face. "You want to bore them into submission." "I want to frustrate them," Leo corrected gently. "Julian Croft is a man of action. He's used to snapping his fingers and making things happen. A protracted, tedious, paper-based war of attrition is his personal hell. Sarah, she's running towards a new, exciting life. She doesn't want to be bogged down in the dusty minutiae of a divorce she thought would be clean. I want this process to be the least exciting, most irritating part of their new, vibrant lives." Arthur chuckled. a low, rumbling sound. "I like it. It's undignified." "For them, that is." "Very well, Mr. Evandale. We shall be the yarrow in their legal garden. Not a showy flower, but a persistent, deep-rooted weed that's devilishly hard to pull out. We will be the soul of patience." It was the first seed. Leo left Arthur's office feeling lighter than he had in days. The path was clear. The design was taking shape. Back at the workshop, the scent of sawdust and linseed oil was a balm. His two employees, Maya and Ben, had heard the news through the small-town telegraph of mutual friends. They were somber, offering their support. "Whatever you need, Leo," Ben said, his young face earnest. "We've got your back." "Thank you," Leo said, and he meant it. "For now, what I need is to work. We have the Davenport dining set to finish. Let's focus on that." He found a strange solace in the rhythm of the workshop. The buzz of the saw, the scrape of the plane, the gentle tap-tap-tap of a chisel. Here, effort yielded visible, tangible results. Here, cause and effect were simple and honest. It was the perfect antidote to the complex, dishonest world he'd been thrust into. He threw himself into the Davenport project. It was a complex commission involving a 12-seater table with intricate inlay work. He spent hours at the bench, his entire world narrowing to the line of a dovetail joint, the smooth curve of a table leg. He didn't think about Sarah. He didn't think about Julian. He thought about grain direction and glue viscosity. One evening, as he was applying a coat of oil to the nearly finished tabletop, making the rich walnut grains sing, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. His first instinct was to ignore it, to let the silence be his answer. But that wasn't the plan. The plan required engagement, however minimal. The plan required patience. He opened the message. "Leo, I know you're hurting. I'm sorry it had to be this way. But this legal stalemate is ridiculous. Julian's lawyer says your guy is being deliberately obtuse. Can't we just talk and be adults about this?" He read it twice. The tone was a perfect blend of condescension and faux concern. "Be adults," she meant. "Roll over and give me what I want." He didn't reply immediately. He finished wiping the oil into the wood, admiring the deep, lustrous glow. He cleaned his brush meticulously. He washed his hands. Then, and only then, did he pick up his phone. His reply was a masterpiece of relaxed brevity. "Hi, Sarah. Under the advice of my counsel, all communication should go through Mr. Pembleton. Hope you're well." He pictured her reading it. The frustration, the confusion. She would have expected anger, or pleading, or a torrent of abuse. She would not have expected this bland, polite, and utterly immovable wall. He sent the text and put his phone away. He felt a quiet, profound satisfaction, deeper and more lasting than any momentary rage could have provided. The first seed was planted. Now he had to water it. A month passed. The legal yarrow was doing its work beautifully. Arthur Pembleton's calm, pedantic letters were, as predicted, driving Julian's high-priced lawyer to distraction. Leo received a forwarded email from Arthur with the subject line, "RE, Discovery Request, Item 7B. The body of the email from Julian's lawyer was a single, furious line. "Is your client intentionally trying to waste everyone's time and money?" Arthur's reply, which he'd copied to Leo, was a model of serenity. "My client is merely ensuring a fair and transparent process, as is his right. We look forward to receiving the fully itemized documentation for the claimed business development expenses incurred by Ms. Evandale during the period in question." Leo smiled. The business development expenses were, he was sure, dinners with Julian, trips and gifts, all now being retrofitted as Sarah's vital contributions to Evandale and Company. Forcing them to detail every cent was a brilliant, petty annoyance. But the legal front was only one garden bed. The social landscape was another. Sarah and Julian were now a public couple. They appeared in the society pages of the local paper, attending charity galas and gallery openings. Sarah's Instagram, which Leo had not unfollowed, was a curated gallery of her new life. Cocktails on rooftop terraces, designer dresses, her smile looking brighter and more brittle than ever. The old Leo would have been gutted. The new Leo saw it as reconnaissance. He knew their world. Julian moved in circles of moneyed, self-important people, developers, architects, boutique hotel owners. They were Leo's potential clientele. It was time to start a gentle, social pruning. His first opportunity came with Elara Vance. Elara was a fiercely intelligent, chain-smoking septuagenarian who owned a string of boutique hotels known for their impeccable, quirky style. She was also a former client and a good friend. She had commissioned a series of custom headboards and writing desks from him 2 years prior. She was also, famously, no fan of Julian Croft. He builds sterile glass boxes for people with more money than taste. She'd once told Leo, exhaling a plume of smoke for emphasis, "No soul." Leo called her and invited her for a drink at a quiet, old-fashioned pub far from the trendy spots Julian frequented. "Leo, my dear," she said, enveloping him in a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 and tobacco. "I heard. That wretched girl. And that preening peacock, Croft. I'd like to banish them both to a suburban tract home." Leo laughed. A genuine warm sound. "It's good to see you, Elara." They settled into a worn leather booth. After the pleasantries, she fixed him with a sharp gaze. "So, what's the plan? I assume you're not just letting them walk all over you." "The legal process is proceeding," Leo said, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "But I have a different kind of favor to ask, a professional one." "Name it." "I'd like you to commission a new piece from me, something high profile, for the lobby of your flagship hotel." Alara's eyes narrowed in interest. "I'm listening." "A statement piece. A. Tree of life, reception desk perhaps. Carved walnut, with inlaid brass and mother of pearl. Something that will be the first thing every guest sees. Something that will be photographed, written about in design blogs." A slow, cunning smile spread across Elara's lined face. "You want to remind everyone in our little world that Leo Evandale is still the premier craftsman in this city. That while Julian Croft is busy stealing wives, you are busy creating art." "Something like that," Leo said mildly. "And you want it to sting?" she pressed. "You want them to see your genius celebrated in a place they can't ignore." "I want the narrative to change," Leo corrected. "Right now, the story is, successful developer sweeps artisan's wife off her feet. I'd like the story to become, visionary craftsman creates masterpiece despite personal turmoil. It's a better story." "It's a magnificent story," Elara declared, stubbing out her cigarette. "Consider it done. Draw up the designs. Send me the quote. I'll make sure the right people are at the unveiling." The second seed was planted. The next phase of his social pruning was more subtle. He began accepting every invitation he received, something he'd often declined before, preferring the quiet of his workshop. He went to gallery openings, fundraising dinners, industry mixers. He was always calm, always impeccably dressed, always willing to talk about his work. When people cautiously brought up Sarah, he had a prepared response, delivered with a sad but resolute smile. "It's a difficult time, but I'm focusing on my work. I believe in building things that last." The contrast was stark and deliberate. He was the stable, reliable craftsman. Julian was the flashy property flipper. Sarah was the woman who'd traded substance for sparkle. At one such event, a launch party for a new restaurant, he found himself face to face with them for the first time. It was a shock to his system, like touching a live wire. Sarah looked stunning in a crimson dress, her arm linked through Julian's. Julian was in his element, holding court, his laugh too loud, his suit too expensive. There was a moment of frozen silence as they saw him. Sarah's smile vanished. Julian's eyes narrowed, then widened with a performative bonhomie. "Leo, good to see you," Julian said, extending a hand. The gesture was an act of aggression, a test. Leo took the hand. His grip was firm, dry, and brief. Julian, Sarah, you both look well. His calmness was a weapon they had no defense against. Sarah flinched. Leo, how are you holding up? I'm well, thank you, he said, his voice a placid lake. Busy. Just landed a major commission from Ilara Vance for her flagship hotel. A, Tree of Life, reception desk. It's going to be quite a project. He saw the flicker in Julian's eyes. Annoyance. Ilara Vance was a prize he'd been trying to woo for years. That's wonderful, Sarah said, her voice strained. I'm glad your work is going well. It's my sanctuary, Leo said, his gaze holding hers for a second too long. Then he turned his attention back to Julian. I heard you're developing the old industrial site on the riverfront. The Croft Zenith. Ambitious. Julian puffed out his chest. It is. It's going to redefine the city's skyline. I'm sure, Leo said, his tone neutral. Well, best of luck with it. The foundation is everything, after all. If that's not right, the whole thing can come tumbling down, if you'll excuse me. He gave a slight nod and moved away, melting into the crowd. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could feel their stunned silence behind him like a physical force. He had pruned them. Publicly, politely, and with devastating effect. He had shown everyone watching that he was unbowed, that his reputation was untarnished, and that he was still a force to be reckoned with. The social garden was being weeded, and Leo was just getting started. The Tree of Life desk was more than a commission. It was a meditation. For 8 hours a day, Leo lost himself in the walnut slab, his chisels and gouges becoming extensions of his will. He carved twisting branches, delicate leaves, and embedded shimmering fragments of brass and mother of pearl to represent light and fruit. The physical labor was exhausting, but it purified his mind. With every curl of wood shaving, he felt a little lighter. Meanwhile, Arthur Pembleton's legal treacle was having its intended effect. The divorce proceedings had stalled. Julian's lawyer, a man whose time was billed in 6-minute increments, was growing increasingly exasperated with Arthur's requests for clarification on the most mundane details. The cost was mounting, and there was no end in sight, but Leo knew that financial pressure was the only language Julian truly understood. It was time to turn up the heat, not with a blowtorch, but with the slow, steady warmth of compost, transforming waste into something fertile for his own purposes. He started with a deep dive into Julian's business, Croft Properties. As a publicly traded company, a lot of information was available if you knew where to look. Leo spent his evenings, after his workshop hours, at the local library, scrolling through corporate filings, annual reports, and property records. He wasn't a financial analyst, but he was a man who understood materials, structures, and costs. A pattern began to emerge. Julian was aggressive. He was leveraging himself to the hilt to fund his Croft Zenith project and 2 other large developments simultaneously. The projections in his annual reports were wildly optimistic, predicated on a perpetually booming real estate market. Leo saw the telltale signs of overextension, the use of complex financial instruments, the high debt-to-equity ratio, the reliance on pre-sales to secure construction loans. It was a house of cards, beautifully designed, but vulnerable to the slightest breeze. Leo couldn't create a gale, but he could gently exhale. He remembered a client from a few years back, a quiet, meticulous journalist named Ben Carter, who wrote for a respected financial paper. Ben had commissioned a beautiful, minimalist writing desk. They'd struck up a friendship based on a shared appreciation for things that were fit for purpose. Leo gave him a call. Ben, it's Leo Evandale. Leo, good to hear from you. I was sorry to hear about everything. Thank you, Ben. I'm actually calling with a story idea. Off the record for now. I'm listening, Ben said, his reporter's instincts kicking in. It's about the local property market, Leo began, choosing his words carefully. There's a lot of buzz around certain high-profile developments. The Croft Zenith, for instance. I was just looking at the public filings, and I have to say, as a craftsman who understands margins and materials, the projected costs seem aspirational. The land acquisition price alone for the Zenith site was astronomical. I'm just wondering how the math works, especially with two other major projects sucking up capital at the same time. It feels brittle. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Brittle, Ben repeated. That's an interesting word. You're not the first person to whisper that name to me, Leo. But coming from you, it carries weight. You're not a rival. You're an observer with a unique perspective. Send me the specifics of what you're looking at. Leo did. He sent a calm, factual email, highlighting the public data that gave him pause. He didn't accuse Julian of anything illegal. He simply pointed out the financial engineering, the optimistic assumptions, the sheer scale of the risk. A few weeks later, an article appeared in the business section. The headline was mild. Local developer Croft bets big on city's boom. It wasn't an expose. It was a cautious analysis. But it used words like highly leveraged, aggressive expansion, and market-dependent. It quoted anonymous industry analysts who expressed concern about the company's risk profile. The day the article came out, Leo was finishing the final polish on the Tree of Life desk. His phone buzzed. It was a text from a number he didn't recognize, but he knew who it was. Was that your doing, you pathetic little man? Trying to hurt me with a newspaper article? It changes nothing. Julian. The polished facade was cracking. The relaxed revenge was getting under his skin. Leo didn't reply. He simply took a screenshot of the message and emailed it to Arthur Pembleton with the subject line, harassing communication from opposing parties' partner. For the file, the compost was working. The financial pressure was now public knowledge, and Julian was feeling it. His company's stock price dipped slightly. More importantly, the narrative was shifting. Julian Croft was no longer just the dashing, successful developer. He was also a potential gambler. The unveiling of the Tree of Life desk was a triumph. Olara advanced through a lavish party in her hotel lobby. The local glitterati were there, including, Leo noted with satisfaction, several of Julian's key investors. The desk was a showstopper. People ran their hands over the smooth carved wood, marveling at the craftsmanship. Leo gave a short, humble speech, thanking Olara for her faith and talking about the meditative power of creating something meant to last for generations. He was the picture of dignified resilience. He saw people looking at him with respect, and then glancing at each other with knowing looks. The contrast between the creator and the destroyer had never been clearer. Later that night, as the party wound down, Olara found him by the desk. "You've started something, my boy," she said, her voice low. "I've had 3 people ask me for your card tonight, and 2 of them are investors in Croft's Zenith project. They're nervous. They see this," she gestured to the magnificent desk, "and they see stability, quality, permanence. They see the opposite of what Julian is offering." Leo smiled, placing a hand on the cool, solid wood of his creation. "It's just a desk, Olara. It's a statement, Leo. And they're listening." The financial compost was enriching his soil. The seeds of doubt were sprouting. The relaxed revenge was proceeding exactly on schedule. The Tree of Life desk's success brought a new wave of clients to Evandale and Company. Leo was selective, taking on projects that interested him and, crucially, that enhanced his growing reputation for integrity and quality. He was no longer just a furniture maker. He was a brand representing authenticity in a world of flash and speculation. The divorce proceedings, thanks to Arthur's masterful stalling, were still crawling through the courts. Sarah's Instagram posts had become less frequent and, Leo thought, slightly forced. The vibrancy seemed to be wearing thin, replaced by a strained performance of happiness. He heard through the grapevine that she and Julian had had a very public argument at a charity auction. The financial pressure from Ben Carter's article had been a pinprick, but pinpricks add up. Leo decided it was time to find a structural fault line in Julian's perfect world. Every building has one. You just have to know where to look. His opportunity came from an unexpected source. Maya, his young apprentice. "Hey, Leo," she said one afternoon, looking up from her laptop. "You remember that guy, Rob, who used to work for Croft Properties? The site foreman on the North Star Apartments? He's a friend of my dad's." Leo's ears pricked up. "Vaguely. What about him?" "He got laid off a few months ago." Apparently Croft brought in a new, cheaper contractor for the Zenith project. Rob's pretty bitter about it. He was over for dinner last night and wouldn't stop complaining. Said Croft cuts corners like it's an Olympic sport. He was talking about the foundation work at the Zenith site. Leo put down his sanding block. What did he say about the foundation? Said they hit a bunch of underground water seepage. The proper way to handle it would be to halt, reassess, and bring in specialized engineers to design a proper drainage and reinforcement system. Expensive and time-consuming. And what did Julian do? Leo asked, his voice carefully neutral. According to Rob, he ordered them to. Just deal with it. They used a cheaper chemical injection method to try and seal it and poured the concrete over it. Rob said it's a ticking time bomb. The pressure from that water will find a way out eventually. It could cause shifting, cracks. He said he was glad he wasn't on that project anymore because he wouldn't want his name on it. A structural fault line, a literal one. This wasn't just gossip. This was a potential gold mine. But how to use it? He couldn't go public with it. It was hearsay from a disgruntled ex-employee. It would look like a smear campaign. He needed to get the information to someone who had the power and the motivation to act on it. He thought of the two nervous investors Ilara had mentioned. He called her again. Ilara, it's Leo. A hypothetical question. If a major developer, say, the one building the Zenith, had potentially cut corners on a foundational level, something that could lead to massive future liabilities, who would be the most motivated person to know about it? Ilara was silent for a moment. The insurance underwriters, she said finally, and the lead investor, a pension fund from out of state. They have the most to lose. Why? Do you have something? Nothing concrete, Leo said. Just a whisper from a source who has no reason to lie. A whisper about water where it shouldn't be. Water? Ilara repeated softly. That's the devil. Send me the details of this whisper. I've a contact at that pension fund. A nudge from me, coming from a concerned local business owner who heard troubling things from a former employee. It might be enough to trigger a quiet, internal review. They'll send their own engineers. If there's a problem, they'll find it. Leo compiled a calm, factual, and anonymous memo. He outlined the alleged issue with the underground water, the recommended solution that was bypassed, and the cheaper method employed. He cited the source only as a former senior site manager on Croft projects. He sent it to Ilara, who forwarded it to her contact with a brief, concerned note. The wait began. This was the hardest part of the relaxed revenge. The patience. He had to trust the process. He continued his work, building a beautiful library for a private client. The rhythmic work, keeping him centered. Weeks turned into a month. Then he got a call from Arthur Pembleton. The lawyer sounded almost giddy. Leo, you are not going to believe this. I just got a call from opposing counsel. They are offering a settlement. A full settlement. Leo's heart beat a little faster. On what terms? They are dropping all claims to the future value of Evandale and Company. They are agreeing to a straightforward, no-fuss division of the marital assets as they currently stand. They want this over with. Now. Why the sudden change of heart? Leo asked, though he had a very good idea. All my contact would say, Arthur chuckled, was that his client, Mr. Croft, has unforeseen business pressures and needs to consolidate his focus. He was practically begging. The structural fault line had been found. The pension fund had clearly done its review and had come down on Julian like a ton of bricks. He was now facing the prospect of having to redo the foundation of his flagship project, a catastrophic cost overrun that would cripple him. He needed to liquidate assets, reduce liabilities, and free up cash. A messy, expensive divorce was a luxury he could no longer afford. Leo agreed to the settlement. The paperwork was signed with stunning speed. It was over. He had kept his business, his reputation, and his sanity. A few days after the settlement was finalized, Sarah showed up at his workshop. He saw her through the window, standing uncertainly on the pavement. She looked thinner, older. The vibrant new life had faded. He considered not answering the door, but he felt a strange sense of closure was needed. He opened the door, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sarah, Leo?" She hugged herself, looking small. Can we talk?" He stepped outside, leaving the door open. The scent of cut wood drifted out. I wanted to see you," she said, her voice trembling. "It's all fallen apart, Leo. Julian, he's a mess. The Zenith project is in trouble. The investors are furious. He's not the man I thought he was. It was all a facade." Leo said nothing. He just listened. "I made a terrible mistake," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I threw away something real for a fantasy. I see that now. I see what you built here," she gestured to the workshop. "And I see what he builds. It's all hollow. I'm so sorry." He looked at her, this woman he had once loved. He felt a distant pang of pity, but no anger, no desire for reconciliation. The revenge was complete. It had not required him to become a monster. It had only required him to be more fully himself, patient, meticulous, and committed to building things that last. "Sarah," he said, his voice gentle but final. "I accept your apology. I hope you find what you're looking for." It was a dismissal. She heard it. She nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. She turned and walked away, back to her hollow world. Leo watched her go until she turned the corner. Then he took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the clean, honest air. He went back inside his workshop, to the scent of wood and the promise of a new project. The garden was weeded. The structure was sound. He picked up a piece of maple, feeling its solid, reliable weight in his hands. It was time to build something new. That concludes this tale. If you want to be here for the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time.